What's up, film fighters? I'm Matt Romery, and before we get started, I want to encourage you to head on over to one of my favorite places on the web, onlinevideocontest.com. It's the #1 site on the net for filmmakers to find, track, and win video contests. So get on over there and check it out.
We set the rules, you make the films, you decide the winner.
You're listening to the Film Fights Podcast.
This is the Film Fights Podcast. It's our first ever episode, and the point of this podcast is not only to discuss what's happening over at filmfights.com, but to simply talk about movies and filmmaking in general, as well as give you guys a little bit behind-the-scenes info on the projects we're working on. And for this pilot episode, we're going to dig into each of our backgrounds, kind of our origin stories. And we're going to chat about what got us into film, and more specifically into filmfights.com. And with us today, not nervous at all, is Simon the Phantom Monk. How does it feel to be the new champion of filmfights.com?
Terrible.
Justin shaking his head.
It was terrible knocking Justin off the top. You know, what can I say? I mean, really,
Well,
it's the holy grail, isn't it, of film fights, to get to that top spot. So, yeah,
Now,
feels
technically,
awesome.
I have had many groups over the years, so I have had Indie Mogul and Sometimes Funny. So if I ever decide to aggregate all those wins together, I mean, it might be a little bit different. So technically, you know, you're okay, but I still have a couple more years in my own mind of relevancy.
There you go.
You won the battle, but not the war, Monk.
That's probably actually the first way you guys probably ever, if you do remember me, is that I always complained because I wanted Gator John added onto my Film Fights record. So one day we're going to pin down that web guy. We're going to get him to aggregate all of our stuff together there. And then you'll be the true champion once again, Justin.
Okay, thank God.
We also have here Tyler, who's kind of the man behind the scenes, the day-to-day dirty work man of filmfights.com. How's it going, Tyler?
Heyo, what's going on, guys?
And we've got Justin, the founder of Film Fights, here with us, who's been on the road and living the crazy life on the film festival circuit here lately. Justin, how's it going?
It's going great. We just had our Los Angeles premiere like 2 days ago, and I'm still kind of recovering from the stress of that. So it's been fun. It's been the film festival circuit dream that I've had for years, and it's a small version of what the real thing is like.
Right, and for people who would like to kind of follow you in all those awesome little videos you do to keep people updated, where can they do that?
Double Digits Doc, so facebook.com/Double Digits Doc, and then sometimes I post them on our Indie Machines YouTube channel as well. But awesome. I have a bunch. I really want to put together the one from the Tallgrass Festival in Kansas, because that was really the most epic experience for if people who don't know, Eric and I just finished our first feature documentary called Double Digits. And so we played at, I think, 5 or 6 festivals, and the biggest one was Kansas. We had like 300 people. We got several standing ovations. The subject of our documentary is from Kansas, so he was there as well. And it was just like, you know, when you're working on a movie and you're just stuck in this like editing cave for like 2 years, to be like in a room with hundreds of people who are applauding, and your brain's kind of like, are they clapping for my movie, or I'm confused.
Wow.
So it was awesome.
Good for you, man. So, all right, well, that's everybody. You know who's here now, who's talking to you. And to start things off, kind of our cold open strategy here is just to kind of talk about what we've seen lately. And I'll kind of get the ball rolling. I know, Tyler and Justin, I know you've seen this movie. I don't know, Simon, if you've seen it, but The Visit.
Yeah, I thought that was really good. And, like,
I did too.
It was. I went into it not knowing anything like really about it, and not realizing that it was like kids making a documentary. Like, that was. I think if I would have known that, I probably wouldn't have been as excited to see it. But then when I went and saw it, it was actually still pretty good.
Dude, it freaked me out. Whole night, I'd wake up to go to the bathroom, and I'd just be looking around waiting for like an old lady to be crouched on her like all fours looking at me. That movie ruined me for a good 24 hours.
Old ladies are the worst.
It's funny because I think a lot of people, my friend Ron posted about this, a lot of people consider M. Night Shyamalan, like his movies, like a huge failure and him kind of like a failed director, but the reality is that his movies, even the terrible ones, still made money.
Tons.
And that is what's really kind of mind-blowing. Like, his name still holds a lot of water, worldwide, box office wide. So it is kind of like I think a lot of people thought, oh, he was failing in Hollywood and couldn't get money, so he had to do this scrappy like little thing. But that really wasn't the case.
Right.
I was really excited when his movie, like the new movie came out. I actually like his movies. The only one I didn't like was the one that he did with Will Smith, but I don't think he wrote that one. I think that was
After Earth, I think it was.
Yeah. But like everybody hated The Village and hated The Happening, and I was like, The Happening had its like flaws, but I thought overall like it was a really interesting story to me. Like, yeah, okay, The Wind, no, but it was good. it was a clever idea. Like I appreciated that.
But I think a lot of people's problem with his work though is he started really strong with The Sixth Sense, didn't he? I mean, the first big film, blew a lot of people away. So I think that's the problem.
Yeah,
I don't know. I think
Unbreakable, Sixth Sense,
Yeah.
Signs.
His best film is Wide Awake with Rosie O'Donnell by far.
I don't
haven't
even
seen
know
that.
those
I haven't
things. I've
seen
never
it.
even heard of those movies. You're just saying words, Tyler. I don't even believe it.
Wide Awake. It is this really interesting movie about a little kid searching for, answers to death with Rosie O'Donnell.
Oh my God!
It's
How
his
does that
first
get
movie.
pitched and picked up in any circle?
I don't know, but
I also saw. While we're on the scary movie thing, have you guys seen Babadook?
Yes.
yes.
I just saw that. Yeah. So Marissa and I just watched that the other night, and it was really good, really creepy, and I think that the acting across the board was really good, and the kid in that movie, because that's always the key of those creepy kid movies. Just like same with Sixth Sense, is like the kid's got to be creepy, and it doesn't spoil anything to say like the kid looks creepy. Like you just want to punch his face. That's what my wife
Yeah.
kept saying. She's like, I just want to punch his face. He's got a punchable face. And it's interesting to see how his character changes throughout the movie because he does change. Of course. At the end, I wasn't really sure, and not to ruin the whole movie, it's definitely worth watching, but I really wasn't kind of sure what the point was, like what it was trying to say. To me, it wasn't very clear, but the journey to get there was well done and interesting.
All right, so I have a theory on that, on what it might have been trying to say, because I was thinking the same thing. I was like, what the hell is the point of this thing? And the only thing I could come up with was that possibly it was her trying to let go, and without spoiler alert here. Her trying to let go of what happened to her husband and realizing that she had to live with it. She couldn't let it go. She just had to live with it, which is kind of, if you think about how it ends, kind of ties into that because they're just like, all right, let's keep him in the basement or however,
Yeah,
Now you're spoiling it. See, now you're spoiling it.
I kind of feel that was the same thing though. Like that's how I took it as well. Like it was her dealing with it, in the end, and it wasn't really. I don't even know if it was anything. Yeah, whoever's listening, if you haven't seen this, we just ruined everything for you, so don't even watch it.
No.
No, it's a must see. It's definitely one of the better horror movies that's come out.
No,
in a
it's
few
really
years.
good, clever.
I saw The Martian. I thought that was a fun movie. It hit me on all the different levels. Ridley Scott's just like the most consistent director of all time. I mean, that guy's awesome. Kudos to you Englishmen over there, Simon.
Number one, film fights.
Yeah.
That's why they're shooting Star Wars there.
Speaking of Star Wars,
Yeah.
we're all excited.
Yeah.
But what do you guys think about Luke not being in any of these trailers, except for that one little moment where his hand goes on to R2-D2 there? You have no idea. Is he on the dark side? What you guys have any? Oh, jeez. Simon, for all you listeners who can't see us,
Wow.
Simon just threw on a very elaborate Star Wars beanie. But hey, you know what? I'll one-up you here. I got this mounted above my desk.
Nice.
All I've got is I've just got a white phone. That's about it. That's all I can do.
Yeah, I have. You know what? I'm with you there. I have the R2-D2 case here.
Oh my gosh, you guys came prepared. I've been
Yeah.
trying to avoid. I watched the first two, like the first teaser and the first trailer, but now just kind of because I've been busy, but B because I feel like I do want to kind of be surprised by the film. I'm looking forward to that experience. So I've been trying to avoid all the trailers because I'm like, I'm going to see the movie. It's not like a trailer where you're like, oh, I have to see the trailer to see if it's going to be good. Like, I've already bought my ticket. So why ruin it, why spoil any moments that I don't have to?
Yeah, I think I'm kind of with Justin on that. Like, I've watched the first trailer like a ton of times. I really thought that one was like the most appealing. But like the fact that they haven't shown anything with Luke is kind of, I think it's nice because they're going to give away too much in the trailers, and
Right.
Yeah.
I don't want to know. I want to be surprised.
I think there's a lot of misdirection in the trailers, though. I think there's a lot of people with different theories as to why Luke's not in it, and who various characters are and who they're related to. But I think there's a lot of like misleading sort of the way they put it together. I don't think they're giving away too much. I think they're leaving people to make up their own theories. But I think a lot of people are going to be really surprised.
J.J. Abrams and his damn mystery boxes.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Good reference.
Well, I'm at kind of a weird advantage/disadvantage because some of our friends out here actually shot the behind the scenes for the new movie and are currently shooting the behind the scenes for episode 8. So
Oh my God!
I know.
hate your friends.
Can you imagine that job, right? And
No.
they're these super talented twins, and they're just really great. And so we'll just get them drunk at parties, and they'll start like dropping like super subtle hints of what's gonna happen. Like say that this happens to the Millennium Falcon, and maybe because I'm sure they're NDA'd like up the ass, but
Sure, yeah.
obviously, and now they're gonna go to jail, but. That's another reason why now I'm like, okay, I have potential information at my fingertips. I do not want to be tempted to figure out more.
Yeah.
They actually did the behind the scenes because they work with Bad Robot, and they did the behind the scenes for the first Star Trek movie that JJ did. And I would really recommend that behind the scenes. It's done so well if you get the Blu-ray. And I had seen the behind the scenes, I think before I met them. And it's just done so perfectly, so well, and it really covers. A lot of times, behind the scenes are just the actors and the crew like saying it was great. I loved working with blah blah blah. Like this really gets into the nitty gritty of like JJ's on set and he's like, I'm worried about this scene because this thing isn't working, and like I hope it works.
That's cool.
It's very in the moment and very real. And so when I met them and found out that they had shot and edited that, I freaked out because I just loved how they put that together. So any film fan, any film buff should definitely check out those behind the scenes, and that's why it's great they're doing Star Wars because I'm sure they'll be, just as excellent as the Star Trek one was.
Absolutely. Speaking of behind the scenes, do you guys watch Project Greenlight?
Yes.
Yes.
No.
That is an awesome.
I don't watch it.
No, Simon.
Simon, you got to catch up, Simon.
I've got a lot of
He's
catching
been
up
locked
to
in the
do.
bedroom.
Yep.
that guy. What did you think about that director this season?
I thought
liked
it was
him.
kind of, I think it's funny because they really set him up as like, oh, he's a director with like vision, and I think that's really important. When we work on stuff, like a narrative director really needs to have an opinion. But I think sometimes he just fought for the wrong stuff. What do you think, Tyler?
I liked him. I think that he was a little. I mean, he definitely was like a character. Like he was a little bit. He was a little bit much at times. But I was just so disappointed in Effie, the producer. Like I feel like she was always working against him. As much as she says she's working for him, it just seemed like everything was against what he was trying to do or just misleading, and it would start these like battles, and I was just like, I feel like as a producer for her, what her job should have been was try and make everything possible happen for the director who has the vision, and if you can't, then you try and figure out a way to make something similar happen. And it just seemed like every time she'd say, no, this is not what's happening, we're not doing that, which I understand you have to lay down the line sometimes, but she was, I don't know. She was too much, and I think she brought drama onto the set, which was good for the show, but
Right.
probably not good for the movie. I haven't seen the movie yet. I've watched all of the series, but I haven't watched the movie yet.
I have my bosses and I talk about this show every time we come back to work on Monday, and they're from that world, but in New York. They worked as producers in New York for 40 years, and they really liked Effie and they really hated the director.
Really?
Yeah, and I kind of I understood what they were saying about Effie. She's really good at getting things done, at making sure you stay under budget. But I agree. I thought she created so many battles where there didn't need to be any battle.
Yeah. I would assume she's probably like a really talented producer for certain types of directors. Like she just wasn't working with somebody that was her, style. Like she was put into a situation with, I think like if you're gonna have a producer on your team, like the director and producers, like they have to work together. They have to have a good, rapport with each other. And she definitely wasn't attempting to with him, and I think that was the biggest flaw.
And also, it's a reality show. Creating a feature film takes so many more hours than ever were on screen. So they're not gonna highlight moments of success at all. You're only gonna get the bad stuff. There'll always be drama on a film set. I mean, even when it goes well, there's always some moment of tension, especially on a low budget feature. I mean, that to me seems like the highest stress, because you're trying to do the most with the least money, kind of from a Hollywood perspective. But I mean, I think that so they'd always have drama, and I do think they did choose him for the show, and really the whole premise of the show, Simon. If you should check it out, because it is. I would watch it when I was stressed about my own projects, because I'd be like, oh, that guy's screwed. Yeah, that guy is. I'm fine. That guy's screwed. It'd be kind of sickly relaxing to me. But basically, it started off as who are those the people they're going to have do the script originally? It just changed so many times over the course of whatever. Fairley Brothers, right? Who aren't making great movies anyways. They're not it wasn't going to be good anyways. And then they bring back the guy who won season 1 of Project Greenlight. And I went back and looked at the movies that guy has written. He wrote Hall Pass, and then he wrote, which is a terrible movie.
Yeah,
and then
not
his
even wrote
movie,
it. He just did the screenplay. So
right, it was based on a true story, and so based on a best-selling novel. And he also, the Project Greenlight movie he did was the best of the Project Greenlight movies, but it was still universally pretty panned. So I just feel like that kid was just meant to fail in some ways. And what's really sad is that I went through and I read all the reviews of the film as soon as it came out, because I was just morbidly curious. And I think across the board it just was not a good film. It just was not.
It was the same joke over and over and over again. That's how I felt, in the same setting.
And so you saw the film?
I did.
Okay.
What was it called? The Leisure Class.
Leisure Class, yeah. I was hoping that someone with that many opinions, you hope that they're good, and I do think that there's a lot of value to that in a director. But if you can't back it up with a quality product, because he certainly had enough money. Other directors have made good things for that budget, obviously. It's possible.
Absolutely.
One of the things I thought was really interesting about when they chose him, they were saying they chose him because of the short he did with the unicorn meat.
Right.
Did you guys see that? I watched that, and they were talking it up so much, and I think it was shot. It looked really nice, but I don't know. I didn't think it was that funny. Maybe I just didn't get it. I normally like dark humor and black humor and stuff like that, and I was it just ended on that note. But I wouldn't assume oh, this guy should definitely make a feature-length movie because of that.
Yeah, I think he should be I don't think he's a writer-director. I think he is maybe would be a great DP or just something else. He's got a great attention to detail,
right.
But I just don't think that he or he could just be a director, but with less control. Anyone who can be, I'm sure a lot of the details were good in the Leisure Class, but it's kind of early Wes Anderson for me. I thought the best Wes Anderson movies were always when him and Owen Wilson collaborated, because Wes, especially early on, was very dry, and Owen Wilson brought a real looseness to it. So it's all about finding that right creative team, and I don't think that the James Mann, or I think that's the name of the director, I don't think he had that right creative team to create something good with the elements he was given.
Yeah. All right. Well, before we keep Simon up too late, I want to move on, but I do want to get a little comment from Simon here on the new Ash vs. Evil Dead series. I watched that 2 nights ago. And I mean, it got me jacked up. It was awesome.
The first episode is amazing.
It completely satisfied me.
Brilliant. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they've really kept it in keeping with the original movies. There's a lot of Evil Dead 2 in there and Evil Dead 3, I think. Army of Darkness. I thought it was amazing. I mean...
Tell me you didn't jump off your couch when he connected with the chainsaw again.
It was so cheesy, though. So cheesy. But brilliant.
but perfectly
yeah,
cheesy.
Yeah. And it's nice.
It was great.
It's nice to see that Sam Raimi's still putting him through the ringer as well. Still trying to mess him up.
Yeah. You can tell it makes a difference when Sam Raimi's on board.
Yeah.
It's not just a spin-off. It's like it could be the third movie, or fourth movie. Excuse me.
Fourth, yeah, absolutely.
Simon, did you ever see Drag Me to Hell?
Yeah, brilliant. I love that as well.
I've had this dream forever, and I put it on message boards back in the day because I was like, please somebody see this and make this into a movie. Make a sequel to Drag Me to Hell where Justin Long goes and finds Ash, and Ash ends up being that girl's uncle.
Brilliant.
And then they go to hell to get her back. Because I thought that movie was, like, it's so underrated. Like, that movie was really good, and everybody was just like, whatever. And I was like, that's a really good, like...
I loved it.
Sam Raimi.
Yeah,
I thought it was really good.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move on here. We want to do a little film fights news here. Back to the website. And Simon, are you ready for this?
In the virtual reality fight, we had a great contest with entries from Staying Kids Productions, Will's Animated Visions, Cypress Creek Productions, and Plot Makers. Staying Kids Productions were victorious with 15 votes for their entry MPC 42, getting them their first win out of 5 entries to date, and after coming a consistent second place in their last 3 heavyweight entries. Will's Animated Visions came in a strong second with 10 votes, Cypress Creek Digital third with 6, and Plotmakers fourth with 3 votes. Next up was the Evil Dead contest with entries from The Phantom Monk and First Timer. The Phantom grabbed first place with a convincing 15 votes over First Timer's 5, getting him his 9th win, and the coveted number 1 spot on the Film Fighters page. The current fight at time of recording this podcast was stock footage, in which entrants were asked to cut themselves into some old stock footage to create a story. We had entries from Round Balls and Brophy for this contest. Future fights for November include the much anticipated and first ever big league fight Great Stories. We're giving you a full 10 minutes to play with to show us the long form story you've always wanted to tell. Entries for that are due November 30th. And the first fight for December is Mucho De Niro. At least one of your characters has to do their best Robert De Niro impression. Extra points for using a line from a De Niro film, the time limit is 1 minute max, and entries are due December 14th. And that concludes this month's Film Fights news.
Well, we all know that Simon won the Evil Dead fight. Killed it. That was an awesome little short.
That was awesome.
Yeah, great behind the scenes. If you haven't seen the behind the scenes, you have to go check it out.
It's always fun when Monk enters. Always.
All the best directors, you kind of know what you're gonna get, and that's how I always feel whenever you enter something. I'm gonna go back into that little world that you always create. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think was that our last fight? Because the next fight's stock footage, right?
And the next fight's stock footage, yeah.
Which was, the one entry was okay, and I don't know how much of this we'll actually use in the podcast, but that couple's video freaked me out.
Yeah.
I was confused, very confused. It's like he's murdering. Is he about to murder her or something?
No, he was
that would have been better.
Watching her.
That would have been less scary if he ended up murdering her. The fact that he just closed the newspaper and walked away and it ended was like...
That's a weird relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was very uncomfortable.
I almost turned it off. I was like, what is going on there? You felt a bit wrong kind of watching it,
The guy's I think his username is Round Balls.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he's entered in the past before, and
Balls.
he always has like
Yeah.
super interesting, like fucking crazy kind of stuff. Like, and I think that's what he's going for in that sense. And it's working because obviously we're all talking about it. So he's got that
Good point.
eraser head kind of shit going on.
I'm thinking of like Andy Warhol when he made that film of the Empire State Building. It's like 7 hours, just a shot of the Empire State Building.
Oh.
Yeah, he did one in 2010, Agency Caught, that I remember from 2010. I'm looking at his page now, Agency Caught. It was so weird. It's kind of like, it was really just strange. It's just strange.
Is this just genius? Is this like the next level of filmmaking? We just aren't there yet?
It's just
He's
like,
the German Harmony
it's
Corone.
strange. Yeah, it's just a bit. I guess it sticks with you. I mean, maybe it's just in a bad way. I don't know.
I mean, obviously we all watched it, so that says something. And I honestly, I can tell you exactly what happened in his because it freaked me out, and I remember his old films as opposed to the one that he's fighting against that's supposed to be better, you know?
Right, and to your point, I mentioned I went on his YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Just check out what he's seen. And it's not like I watched like half a video and then left it. I watched every single video from beginning to end. Because I was like, it was just fascinating.
Yeah. It's that you want to know the dark things, like when you get into that loophole of like, oh, I'm going to read about something like a serial killer, and then you read about all these serial killers, and you're like, why did I just read about all this shit? Why did I
have to go take a shower?
Why is this interesting? Like,
He's got 9 subscribers. I'm about to be his 10th.
Oh, boom. Double digits.
Yeah.
Double digits. Wow, nice name drop.
Wow. There's a lot. There's a lot of videos. All right. Well, I'll save that for when I want to feel weird later.
Yeah.
We should just, every time we do a podcast, we should talk about one of the crazy ass entries that we see from Round Balls.
Yeah, Round Balls is going to be a new staple of the Film Fights podcast.
Yes. I hope that he understands English.
Yeah.
Should somebody translate this into German for him so he can know we're talking about him?
Yeah, right. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the recent fights here.
I think the virtual reality one was good, right?
I thought so too. I thought that was one of the stronger fights we've had in a little while. We had 4 solid. Was it 4 solid entries?
4 good entries. Yeah.
Simon, you did the film Fights TV for that. So why don't you lead us off? What did you think about those, and why did you end up with the decision you did?
Well, I mean, there was flaws with all the entries. I mean, Will's animated visions entry was visually brilliant. I thought, it was the best one of the lot. It was just his audio let him down. It really, he had the music too loud. It was all in the mix, but it was really sort of, I guess, sort of simple, basic errors really that he shouldn't have made. I think for making a film of that quality, he really let himself down with the audio mix. But I think the audio quality was fine. It was just the mix, and if he hadn't made that error, that would have been hands down the winner. I mean, the other entries I think were all on a par with each other. I think really, sort of quality wise.
Agreed.
And the decision I made to go for the one that I did was just pure entertainment value for me in the end, because it was really tough. It was really tough for me not to choose Will's animated visions, but I felt that the error was was a basic one that, for me I went for one that, had everything there. You can follow the story or whatever.
That was such a shame too, because that would have been his 3rd win in a row.
Yeah.
I like the animated one as well, where the woman is like in that creepy room at the end.
Yeah.
The kind of storage area. Like that to me was one of those Film Fights entries where you're kind of like, okay, it's like kind of weird, and then they just take it to that next level of effort, really, where you're like, oh, snap, she's like in this weird room, like, oh, they had to find this weird room and dress her up in an orange jumpsuit, and that, I just really liked that, being surprised by that. That's what I always love about that kind of thing.
Oh,
so
well, I was too.
That one I really
liked. The
liked
ending
too.
was like, whoa, hello. You know what I mean? It started off just like somebody's home movie, didn't it? The beginning of it. It was just
yeah. And I agreed with what you had said, Simon. They held on a couple shots too long. Yeah. But it was shot well. I mean, the actual photography was very crisp and it looked really nice. It was held on a couple shots too long.
That whole transition bit between their sort of virtual reality into the real world was a good 30 or 40 seconds. He could have condensed it right down and still had the same effect, I think.
And just so everybody's aware, if you're listening to this and you're wondering what we're talking about, you can go to filmfights.com and go to the Hall of Fame section and watch all previous entries for this fight, because this was a really good fight and you should check it out.
Yeah, our winner in this fight actually has 6,211 views.
Oh wow, that's pretty awesome.
Good work.
I had just finished reading Ready Player One, and that's like the whole idea for this fight. I was like, oh, we need to do a virtual reality fight because I just read this and I think it'd be fun to see. And I think that one, the Get My Bike one, was like the most like intense, virtual reality. I thought it was really cool.
There's some kind of weird filter on it. There's some kind of weird, I don't know if it was a motion smoothing filter. Something about it was just really surreal, the way the camera moved. I think it was And I'm looking at it now. I think it was some weird, like motion stabilizer they just threw on the whole thing, but it really added something different to it beyond just kind of shaky GoPro footage.
Yeah, and the way the guy like walks up, like it's just not like, it's just enough goofy that it looks like, an actual game you'd be playing.
It's like some kind of weird, city in Europe. I don't know. It's just that added like extra. And there's like no people around.
Yeah.
Cars. I would love to see a behind the scenes of this, of just this guy with a camera strapped to his head running like a goofball all around town. Funny.
So, let's move to Justin's rant.
All right, great.
Justin bitches about Hollywood.
Right, so everyone with aspirations of coming out here and living their dreams can temper them down a little bit.
Bring back to reality.
All right, well, let's see. This week in Justin bitching about Hollywood. This year particularly has been really strange because there's this thing that happens and you really have to get used to it, but someone will come to you and they'll be like, hey, I have unlimited money and let's do something great and fun together. And you're like, great, here's a bunch of ideas, here's a budget, you'll spend a bunch of time setting up all this budget stuff and all this idea stuff. And then slowly the project just kind of dwindles away, smaller and smaller. And then eventually everything you have to change the creative until it becomes totally boring. And then it goes away. And that's happened like 4 or 5 times just this year. It's just been a really strange year this way. A really strange year for that reason. So that's one thing that I think is really important. Like out here is you can never really count your chickens before they're hatched. You always have to wait until you've actually signed something. And even then, I feel like you don't know if it's going to happen until you're on set. And even if you shoot something, it's like until that money's in the bank, you never know. You really don't know. So you have to be maybe the word isn't pessimistic, but you just have to always have as many irons in the fire as possible. So that has been really goddamn annoying this year. And I'm hoping next year is not the same thing. Do you find for you, Matt, I'm not sure, what part of production are you usually doing?
It's definitely not the same ballpark. It's what I actually do is it's called Paradise Coast TV. That's the name of the company, and it's the hotel channel here it's Southwest Florida, Naples, Fort Myers, Marco Island, and it's airboat rides, restaurants, golf courses. That's about 50% of our business. The other 50%, which is a lot more fun, is most often fundraising campaign videos, which are generally documentaries about, the Foundation for Developmentally Disabled or First Book, where they give books to kids in schools, which is, cool, rewarding stuff. I'm a Quentin Tarantino kid. I was born on the whole. This isn't what I saw myself getting into, but for being in Southwest Florida and to be paid to go out with a video camera and edit stuff, I'm never going to complain. It's an absolute blast.
That's good.
And it's a great experience. I often tell my parents to make them okay with my situation that I'm getting paid to go to film school. Because my bosses were in New York for 40 years, as I'd mentioned. They created Reading Rainbow. I don't know if you guys watched that show growing up.
Oh, yeah.
They created that. They produced it for whatever it was, 30 years, and among like 8 or 9 other shows, mostly for kids that were all pretty successful. So I'm getting a lot of the fundamentals and all that, but I've never had to deal with getting a wallet on my side who says, here's a budget, go out, let's make something awesome that you're passionate about, and having projects fall through. And I've never been in that world yet. I've read about it. I went to school studying film studies. I'm obsessed with film, so I'm always reading about stuff. But I have yet to live that experience. And at some point, I've always thought I'd jump into it in New York or Hollywood or something like that, and just dive in and feed myself to the lions until I figured out some way to tread water. But I haven't gotten there yet. I'm kind of enjoying my quiet little life down here. Film Fights is kind of my outlet for, I'm doing all this client work. I got into Film Fights because I wanted to do stuff for fun, stuff that I wanted to do, stuff about dinosaurs and.
Yeah, that's what's funny is I think I was the most productive on Film Fights when I had a full-time job. when I was in New York, and I was doing sort of creative stuff at the startup there, but really not just like straight up video production. So that's really when like we did a lot of sometimes funny stuff and all that. We did a lot of short films because I needed that outlet, and not just needed that outlet, but also my bills were paid for. So it's tough when you're unless I have a paying project, it's just hard for me to put my brain to anything else. Like it's like being like a lion out in the jungle. You're constantly, if you're not eating, you're thinking about where you're going to get your next meal, and it's just hard to think about anything else. And so it's been an especially tough year just because the documentary has just cost. There's just so many expenses and extra costs for doing a feature film that I had no idea about. So it's like I'm working extra hard, taking extra gigs, desperately to try to just pay for all this stuff. So, but at the end of the day, it's about having the freedom and flexibility. It cuts both ways. Like I can do whatever I want, but typically what I do is I work like some every single day, but on my own terms. And if you can't do that yourself, if you don't, and I love that. I love working all the time. It's good. But if you're someone who can't keep to a schedule like that, then you shouldn't try to get out to Hollywood and those and those kinds of things. I'm sure you are, and I'm sure you do great. But it really is very, very difficult. And it's like any business. It takes I think about 5 years to really get it truly going. And we're on about 4 years now, and it's starting to feel like it's getting to that point. But I mean, oh my gosh, it's hard, but. I never regret the choices.
And this is a great little segue here to go into our main topic, which is how we all got into film and eventually into film fights. And I'll kind of just give my little story because I already kind of mentioned it, which is that I went to school for film studies and actually history. I'm a huge fan of history. My dream job is to do like somewhere between Django and like Saving Private Ryan. Somewhere in that world would be. I mean, it's a fantasy.
Just that little world.
That tiny little world. The hardest possible type of film to produce, actually. Or besides, like maybe sci-fi is historical films, because I mean, just to shoot a scene at a coffee table, you have to go out and find all these period costumes and actors. I mean, it's ridiculous. But, anyways, I went to school for that and got a job at a museum as the director of film resources. They actually made that title up for me because I dug a camera out of their closet and I started shooting their events, and they hired me. And I went to lunch one day, and there was a couple shooting a commercial at the restaurant I was eating lunch at. And I told my boss. She happened to know them, and they happened to be the people I've worked for 4 years now. And like I said, I've been doing a lot of client work and wanted to get back into doing stuff for fun. And the hardest thing in the world, I don't know if you guys agree, is coming up with something creative when you have no limitations, when there's just, you can do anything. And Film Fights gave me a little focus. It said, do it in 2 minutes, do it about dinosaurs, and that was what I needed more than anything in the world. And that's why I fell in love with this website. That's why I volunteer my time. It's like my charity. I don't mean to call it that, but that's how I feel about it. I have my work, and then I have my Film Fights, which is my volunteer time. And
we're working on being tax deductible.
Yeah, and I love it. And that's basically my story. So, Simon, I've never asked you this before. How did you get into film and eventually Film Fights?
Well, film. I mean, from a kid, I was well into the old Ray Harryhausen movies, and as soon as I could get my hands on my dad's Super 8 cine camera, I started trying to do my own animations and that. I eventually went to college. I was studying art and design and technology with the intention of going on to art college to do an animation degree. Kind of lost my way, dropped out, got a full-time job, just a regular job. And then about 20 years later, YouTube turned up, and I discovered Indie Mogul through that, and thought, wow, this is really cool, and just started the filmmaking, making my own videos as a hobby, which it still is really, and again found Film Fights through that. Decided to just dive into it and make as many entries as I could. Got a few wins. Got the call.
Now you're the
Tyler.
king.
Started from the bottom, now he's here.
Yeah, exactly.
Just like Drake.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Tyler, how did you get into it, man?
So kind of the same with Monk. I did stuff when I was a kid. You know, me and my friends running around the neighborhood making stuff, and then I stopped for a long time. And I thought I wanted to go into audio for a while, and I went to school for a semester, and I hated it. It was horrible. It was so boring and technical, and I was like, well, I'm screwed. So I ended up traveling around for a while, moving around the country, and then I moved back to Florida, and I ended up getting married. And one day my wife was like, oh, how come you always talk about wanting to make films again, and you never do it. How come you don't? And I was like, oh, because I'm lazy. And she's like, okay, well, why don't you make something? I'm like, no. So then she goes into the back, like her little office. My wife's like a super hobbyist, and she makes this little claymation man. She's like, you're going to make a stop motion tonight, and you're not going to stop until it's made, edited, and done.
That's awesome.
So we stayed up literally all night, and I just made this little claymation with this little guy. And I had so much fun doing it, and I started like getting on the internet, looking, like trying to figure out more things, and I ended up coming across Film Fights, and I was like, this site is so fucking cool. You know, I don't know if we're gonna curse in this, but
Hell yeah!
yeah, there we go. All right, I'm normally pretty PC, but I was like, oh man, this is so awesome, and I think I maybe entered 1 or 2 fights, and then I ended up writing to Justin. I was like, you know, I'm a shitty filmmaker, and I know nothing about how the internet works, but if you ever need help, I can learn, and you know, that's where I started.
And I always accept slave labor, so it worked out great for me.
Justin, how did you come up with this website?
Well, back in the dark ages, you know, long time ago, 2003.
Before YouTube.
Yes, before
Wow.
YouTube, because I always like narrowly avoid becoming incredibly wealthy. So this is one of the many circumstances of that. So I didn't make YouTube. I made Film Fights. And in 2003, October of 2003, when we started it, I mean, one of the biggest selling points was I would make a thumbnail and I would host your video. That was like one of the big perks to Film Fights, because back in the day, if you had a popular video, you wouldn't get a check in the mail for ad payments. You would get a bill from your server company saying you owe us like, you know, $1,000. That was kind of the price of success. And I found a server that was like unlimited for $100 a year, and I was like, this is great. And I'm sure it was sort of shady, but hey, they never charged me extra, so I was like, I'll host everything. But you know, I had found just through doing online videos since, you know, late 90s, early 2000, I had found a small group of maybe 8 or 10 filmmakers. Bobby Miller was one of those early people that I just knew was out there, and so I was like, hey guys, I just wanted a place to. I love competition, and I just love the idea of having somewhere to start conceptually, and just built it from the ground up and did it all by hand for a long time. And it was incredible. I mean, I can link, like Indie Mogul, you know, Indie Mogul wouldn't exist without Film Fights. So many people, my life would be just so different. And, you know, I think the lives of a lot of other people's would be different if it didn't exist. And there was other things at the same time, like Channel 101, but I think that Channel 101, like not to disparage Film Fights, but the bar is kind of higher. Like, it's just for a different crowd. It's a little, I feel like Film Fights was always like a place to foster like learning versus like really, you know, the best of the best in this like particular venue. So that's what was really cool. And through that, I mean, I've just, people like Tyler and Matt and you guys, Simon, like you guys are just the heart of the site. Like it really, I'm sure it wouldn't exist anymore if it wasn't for you guys, you know, hard work. And that is what I've always found. I mean, that's even working with Eric. He just had a great work ethic and made great videos on the site. And I was like, hey, do you want to, you know, do something for Next Few Networks? And that's how Indie Mogul started. So, I mean, I find the people who raise their hand and say, hey, I'll help, and don't flake and do a good job, right away you're in the, you know, 99th percentile. You're people who are incredibly rare and incredibly special. And so, you know, that's why obviously a huge thanks to all you guys, and even doing this podcast. It's that kind of hustle that really will help you succeed in the world in general. But you guys are all on my short list for if I ever do have money someday.
Give me your money.
Yeah, because I mean the idea is people who do stuff because they love it, and can do things consistently and really get a kick out of it. Those are people who I want to work with forever. So it's always just the beginning, because so many people flake and so many people say they're going to do stuff and don't. And you guys are all here and we're doing this, and that's really important.
Yeah, thanks for showing up tonight, guys. I appreciate that.
That's the key.
It's the least I can do.
All right, so make sure you check out filmfights.com, onlinevideocontest.com, and all of our social media pages. Simon, tell them where they can find you on your social media.
On Twitter, @The Phantom Monk. Facebook, there's a Phantom Monk Facebook page as well, so if you look that up. And YouTube, /The Phantom Monk.
Perfect. Tyler, where can they find you?
You can find me on Snapchat at Never Killed a Man, and Twitter, Never Killed a Man. And if you know what that
Doubt
the
it.
movie, but and Facebook, Tyler Hughes.
Perfect.
Me.
And Justin, the Indie Machine.
Yes, you can find youtube.com/The Indie Machines, or we do stuff for Wired a lot. But really, Facebook's the best place to find us. Find us on The Indie Machines at Facebook.
Right, and he also has a Twitter account that's worth following at Indie Machines. And everything for me is my name. Follow me at Matt Romery, youtube.com/Matt Romery. And finally, we're going to try to do something here where we close every episode with a random Film Fights soundbite. And I'm going to edit in a little clip here from one of the Film Fights from the past decade. Yes, that's how long this website's been around. And it's up to you guys to go back and dig or just know off the top of your head, because you're awesome, and try to name what film fight it's from. It's not going to be easy. So we appreciate you guys listening. Any comments below, we really appreciate. And get on over to Film Fights and start entering. It's a great time. It's a great community. And we really appreciate you watching. Oh, excuse me. We really appreciate you listening. And keep on fighting, as I like to say. Thanks for coming, guys. I appreciate it.
No problem.
Bye.
Excuse me. Do you have a tissue? I think I'm going to...